Series is sort of an outgrowth, a result of some things that God has been doing in my life recently. Part of my spiritual journey that has really, frankly, to be honest with you, caught me by surprise. I began following Jesus at the age of 8 and gave my life to follow Jesus and followed him as best as an 8-year-old. Part of my nature, Scott Boyd's broken human nature. And in the back of my mind, I knew these things about myself. I knew they needed to be changed, but I didn't think I was that. After all, there are a lot of people in this world worse than I am. And I would at different times try to make myself more patient. I would try to speak kinder and gentler. I would try to be more giving. And I would try for a period of time, and I'd work on it, but then I never saw anything much change in my life. Not the way it needed to change. And so I just sort of gave up and just, in some ways, became satisfied, complacent. Just ministering, preaching every Sunday, serving you as your minister, doing the best I can, but still, my life, there are areas that needed to be worked on. And then Brian, in our group, where I meet with him, Caden, each week for discipleship, he said, Scott, there's this book out there about spiritual formation, spiritual development. He said, I don't know much about it. It's called Practicing the Way. Practicing the Ways of Jesus. And the subtitle, Be with Jesus, Become Like Him, and Do as He did. And a lot of things we'll be talking about these next weeks sort of have come out of this, things I've gleaned from this book. But if nothing else, what this book helped me realize and understand about myself is that Jesus did not just want part of me, he wanted all of me. Every bit of me. But no matter how much I wanted it, I could not get all of me to follow Jesus. No matter how much I willed it, I could not get all of me to follow Jesus. No matter how much I tried and worked on it and focused in it and leaned into it, I cannot get all of me to follow Jesus. I simply did not have it in me to be the kind of man that Jesus needed me to become. He had created me to be. It had to come from outside of me, from the Jesus outside of me, to do in me what he needed to do. I needed Jesus' love. I desperately needed his patience. I needed him to take over my steering wheel in the car. I needed him to change my nature. I needed Jesus' gentleness. I needed his heart. I needed Jesus' nature in me. And I realized I faced a situation, and I knew how I would normally react, and I did not act the way I normally did. And I said, what's going on here? What's happening to Scott Boyd? And these things and things changing, and then Carol noticed it in me. And then Kirsten noticed it in me. I said, wow, this is, all right. And you know how Kirsten noticed it in me? Okay, a little transparency here. I don't know any of you, when you watch a TV show, do you make comments about the characters you're watching in the TV show or anything in the movie? I mean, okay, when I'm home with my family, I make comments that are probably not the best comments to be making about the people I'm watching, and I'm not going to go into detail. We don't need to go there, but they're not the most flattering things, and I'll just be making all kinds of, the whole time. But then we were watching this movie together, Sunday night movie time, and I'm not saying anything. And Kirsten's sitting there, she said, Dad, are you okay? I said, yeah. She said, you're not saying anything negative about it. She's usually one tell me, Dad, be quiet. I want to listen to what's going on. She said, Dad, you're not saying anything. I said, well, Kirsten, I've been praying and trying to open this up that Jesus would change me in this area. But she said, Dad, you're boring. I need something here, Dad. Come on, give me something. And I want you to know I've got an awful long way to go. So very far to go. And I'll never be fully there, but moment by moment, day by day, as Jesus works in me, that his nature, little by little, is becoming my nature. And my prayer is that over time and over years, that his nature would become my second nature, would become your second nature. And therefore, a message today, second nature form. Now, let's talk about this idea of second nature just for a few moments here, okay? Anybody here knit? Anybody knit? Okay, nobody knits. Missy, do you knit? Are you a professional knitter? No? Okay. All right, Missy knits. Now, if Missy were a professional knitter, we would see her and watch her knitting, and we would see a pattern that she was putting together, and we'd say, Missy, that's beautiful. How do you do that? And if Missy were a professional knitter, she would say, I don't know, it's just come so easy for me. I guess it's just second nature. You know, it's because Missy would have done it for so many years, so often, so many times, that she literally does it without even thinking about it. It just comes naturally for her because she's done it for so many times, over and over and over again. Your second nature is when you do something without thinking about doing it. And basically, it's an acquired habit or tendency in one's character that is so deeply ingrained as to appear automatic. Say that with me. Second nature, an acquired habit or tendency in one's character that is so deeply ingrained as to appear automatic. You know, that's what following Jesus is all about. You know, we have our human nature, right? I have Scott Boyd's human nature. You have your human nature. Our human nature is towards greed. Our human nature is towards self-gratification. Our human nature is watching out for number one. Our human nature is to survival instinct. It's all about me and my family and having the life that we want to try to achieve and meeting our needs. That's our human nature. That is humanity. That's all of us, whether we want to admit it or not. But then what happens, we confront the life of this God-man named Jesus in the Bible. A natural expression of the inner reality of Jesus and his teachings. Doing what he said and did increasingly becomes a part of who we are. Put it more simply, a heart formed by Jesus on the inside leads to a life lived like Jesus on the outside. Say that with me. This is absolutely true. Together, a heart formed by Jesus on the inside leads to a life lived like Jesus on the outside. See, as Jesus' heart of love becomes our heart of love, and Jesus' nature of love becomes our second nature of love, little by little we become a people of love. We become a community of love. And we express that love to the world around us. And Paul, one of Jesus' disciples, understood this process. He understood what's going on in our lives. He understood what Jesus was trying to do through us. So he writes a letter to the church in Rome many years ago, to the new Christians there. And he says, this is sort of what's involved here. He says, therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual or reasonable act of worship. And then verse 2, do not, hear this word, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Notice the two words that I have highlighted, conform and transform. Conform means situations, we can't help it. Our souls are alive and dynamic. They're not stale and static. Everything in us, the best in us and the worst in us, best decisions we made and the worst decisions we made, our past, our present, our future, who we've been and who we're becoming, are all because of spiritual formation. And whether you're into it or not, spiritual formation happens to all of us. Mother Teresa was a product of spiritual formation. So was Joseph Stalin. Mahatma Gandhi was spiritually formed, as was Genghis Khan. Vladimir Lazinski and Vladimir Putin have both been spiritually formed. Our spirits have been formed by a bunch of interactions of all kinds of different things, by the family we were born into, our genetics, our makeups, our minds, the lives we lived, where we've come from, what we've known in life, our habits, our education level, the bad decisions, the good decisions, our relationships, our attitudes, our social environments, and on and on and on. You have been formed. And right now, in this space, as you're listening to each word I am speaking, you are being spiritually formed. With the songs we sang this morning, you were formed. As every word I say, you are in the process of being formed. I am being formed, and together we're all being spiritually formed. When you walk out the doors this morning, once we're finished, and to the afternoon, you will be spiritually formed. To put it another way, you are becoming a person. So the question becomes, the question is not, are you being formed? Rather it is, who or what are you being formed into? And are you happy with that person? I want you to think about that. Really think about that. You're being formed. Are you happy with the person that you're being formed into? You see, spiritual formation is not optional. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, everything you experience, every word you hear, every word you share, every decision you make, every relationship you have, your habits, what you do with social media, how you spend your time, how you don't spend your time. How do you deal with the success or defeat, pain and suffering? All these things are, and so much more, are spiritually forming us. We're not static. We're alive and changing. And the reality is, we are either being formed into the life and the love of Jesus, or we are being formed to the brokenness and the sin of this world. To believe otherwise is just simply an illusion. And for me, this realization for lack of a better word, just blew me up. I didn't realize I'd been so complacent, so satisfied. And then to start to place myself in positions and see everything as a process of being formed. What is that person that I want to become? How do I want people to remember Scott Boyd? How do you want people to remember you? Will your life look like the life of Jesus? Are you becoming the person that you want to become? And will you let Jesus help you become the person that you've been created to be? To live the life that Jesus has created you to live. To be the person of love that Jesus longs for you to experience. So for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about second nature. Jesus' nature becoming our nature and being formed. And each week this is more than just worship. This is more than just songs. This is more than just prayer. This is a time